Okay, so I'm going to read a short Wikipedia article titled
Mhm.
Egg and Wine Diet. The egg and wine diet is a fad diet that was popularized in 1964 and revived in 2018 on social media platforms. The egg and wine diet was first popularized in Helen Gurley Brown's book Sex and the Single Girl, The Unmarried Woman's Guide to Men in 1962, and was published in the Vogue magazine in 1977. The diet advocated the consumption of 3 to 5 eggs per day, plus a 24 US fluid ounce, that's 710 milliliter bottle of wine. For breakfast, 1 egg and a glass of wine are taken. For lunch, 2 eggs and another glass. And for dinner, a 5 ounce, 140 grams steak and the rest of the bottle of wine.
I was really expecting a 5-ounce, 140-gram egg.
like an ostrich egg.
Yeah.
That would be the vegetarian version of it. I'm gonna publish it. I'm gonna write my own Sex and the Vegan Girl, except not vegan. The diet was revived in 2018 on social media platforms and became a meme. Medical experts have warned against the diet as it is nutritionally unbalanced, unsustainable, and in the long run will do more harm than good.
Oh my god, same.
Oh my god, she's just like me for real, for real.
Nutritionally imbalanced, doing more harm than
More harm
good.
than good. Yeah. The high alcohol content, also same,
Same,
of the
yeah.
diet has been described as dangerous and a threat to the liver. Oh gosh. So I am a YouTuber, in case you didn't know. And did you know that, Kaylin, by the way,
I
that I'm a
did know
YouTuber?
that, and does it make me a little sick? Of course. Is there anything worse than a YouTuber? Not that I've seen.
Well, I am one. Popity's nerfed, and in February of this year, I released a video where I did the wine and egg diet and also followed the advice of Helen Gurley Brown in order to get clicks and attention. And it went
How'd
about
that
as
go?
well as anybody could expect. I will be linking the video in the description of this podcast. But over the course of the research for the video, I became kind of obsessed with Helen Gurley Brown, like a little fascinated with her.
This happens.
She is a figure I found frustrating, complicated, both progressive and regressive at the same time.
Mm.
Like, she contains multitudes, and also I think she's utterly hilarious. So, this is her episode. It's the story of her life, but it's also a companion piece to my video I released at the time this episode comes out, probably 6 months ago. It's a little background, it's a little paratext. So, without any further ado, welcome back to Respect the Dead, the podcast where we don't.
Sweaty, it's no surprise that everybody celebrated your demise, and now worms are eating your eyes. So don't you worry your rotten head as you sleep in your sodden bed. It's time to respect the dead. It's time to respect the dead. It's time to respect the dead.
I love the, like, Helen Gurley Brown, "This is your episode." Like, "Helen,
This
this
is
is
your
your
tape.
tape."
And she's watching from hell and she's laughing. Oh, she listens to every episode of this podcast.
I bet. Whatever
Mm.
demons are down in hell are just shoving eggs down that gob.
Hi, I'm Hoots, by the way.
I'm Kaylin, by the way.
And
That's
we're
actually my
talking.
last name, Kaylin, by the
But
way.
Kaylin, by the way. Oh my god,
By the
that'd be
way.
such a cute drag name. Kaylin, by the way.
Like you think it might be Bythway?
But it's by the way.
It's by the way.
Like half
It
away.
yeah, Kaylin Bythway? Oh, it's by the way.
By the
By the
way.
way.
Aside from Sex and the Single Girl and some New York Times and Wall Street Journal obituaries, almost all of the research for this episode comes from Jennifer Scanlon's biography of Helen Gurley Brown titled Bad Girls Go Everywhere, which is a reference to a Mae West quote that just happened to be one of Helen Gurley Brown's favorites, which is "Good girls go to heaven, bad girls go everywhere."
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really good biography too. Go look it up. I've cribbed everything from it.
I love when other people do our research for us.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go dig through Helen Gurley Brown's records. I don't get paid enough for
Just
that.
up in her fucking trash.
I'm not a historian. I have a bachelor's degree in acting. Like,
Oh, just a bachelor's?
oh,
Mm.
yes, not all of us can be PhDs. Helen Gurley Brown was born February 18th, 1922. So I didn't realize this at the time, but I actually released my video on what would have been her 103rd birthday.
That's hilarious.
Like, I did not do it on purpose, but I released it on February 18th.
I guess that's just proof that
We're
the universe,
connected.
the
Yeah.
universe has brought you two together.
Twin
You
souls.
are tethered to her Akashic record.
Welcome back, Helen Gurley Brown.
Wait, when did she die?
Not until 2012.
Okay,
So,
so
yeah, not welcome back. Actually, you want to know who died like a month before I was born?
a lot of people probably, but is there like a
Yeah, a lot of
specific one you're
people.
thinking of?
Yeah, Ted Bundy. He died
Oh
in
my
Florida.
God.
Here she
Okay.
is. Can you see it? It's the eyebrows, right?
It's the eyebrows and the obsession with desecrating the dead.
Yeah. And all the bodies in my fridge.
Well, I mean, wait, there's no way your fridge is big enough for a body in your tiny little
My
apartment.
tiny little
Nice
kitchen.
try.
My kitchen is actually huge. It's just like 80% fridge. You
It
can't
would
see that
actually
because I
be
cut it out of
very
frame.
funny if eventually you turned the camera and we saw inside your kitchen and it was like 4 times the size of the rest of your bachelor apartment.
Yeah.
Just like all unused space.
Or I have like a massive freezer, like an industrial sized freezer in
A
there.
walk-in freezer.
Yeah. I'm like, where do I even put the bed? Helen was from Green Forest, Arkansas, which was at the time a very depressed part of the country and would only get more depressed after 1929 when the stock market crashed. Oh my God, we're living through some of that right now. Helen's mother was named Cleo Fred Cisco.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it, right? Cleo.
Fred?
First, Fred for a
Fred
girl. Are you
Fred for
fucking
a
kidding
girl
me?
is so good.
Are you
I know
kidding
it's
me?
often short for Winifred, but like Fred
Cleo
is
Fred.
so cute.
So cute.
A man
Cleo,
named Fred though, trash.
no,
Get out of
no,
my house,
girls.
garbage. I'm
Girl
calling the
Fred.
police.
Girl
Yeah,
Fred. But then Cleo on top of that too. Love it.
Cleo. Yeah.
Cleo was the oldest of 9 children, and she had been very intelligent and did well in school, where her teachers convinced the family that she needed to go to college. Which again, this is like the 1910s,
They had
1900s.
college back then?
So
Let
yeah,
alone
even
let
for
girls
women.
in?
But not
Wow.
many of them. Not many of them.
Yeah.
But our teachers were like, "You gotta send this girl to college. She's got to learn how to write because once she can
she could
read, once you start writing, she's gonna go places
she could do anything. She could even be a secretary.
or a wife." So she enrolled in the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville and only managed to attend for 1 semester before her family called her home to take care of her younger siblings. Because again, oldest of 9.
Yeah.
And she never went back for a degree. However, back then you could work as a teacher without a degree because they like literally didn't
God
care about the
bless
quality of kids'
America.
education.
God
In fact,
bless America.
in Florida, you can now do that again. They
Oh,
just
that's
changed the rules. Isn't it beautiful?
what are they
I could
teaching?
literally be you could literally
Whatever you
do
want.
anything and you could
Land of
teach
the
whatever
free,
you want.
baby.
Yeah. Doesn't fucking matter.
So as you got a Punisher patch on on your jacket, you're good.
But I think like back in like the 1900s in Arkansas, they were like, well, who gives a shit who's teaching our kids? Because half of them are gonna die in a coal mine anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
So Cleo became a teacher to help the family, and she actually found it like a really meaningful career. She enjoyed her time teaching. And it was
Probably because she
as
didn't have to buy her own school supplies.
she's like, they just bring it to me. It's so
Yeah.
great.
All the
I
chalk I
send the
can eat.
I send the parents these lists. Yeah. I ask for at least 10 times more chalk than I actually need. Because I like to have a little chewing chalk on my 15-minute break. It was as a teacher that she met a fellow teacher named Ira Martin Gurley. Now, Cleo had been in love with her high school boyfriend, a man named Lee Bryan, but Ira had a steady job and he was studying at law school at the same time he was teaching, which made him a more appealing marriage candidate to her family. So Cleo married Ira instead of her high school sweetheart. Cleo and Ira had two daughters, Mary Eloise, which is also a
Excuse me?
Mary Eloise. It's spelled like Eloise, except with an N instead of an S.
Okay.
Who was born in 1917, and Helen Marie Gurley, born in 1922.
They were like, let's keep this weird little name thing going.
I love it. Although
Okay,
Helen Marie is very normal.
yeah. Eloine is insane.
Eloise
Like,
is insane.
that's legitimately insane. Like, at
Made up.
first I did think it was like a spin on Halloween, like Ellowen, which is
Adorable. Love
especially if it
it.
had the little dash between the two E's in Halloween, like
Eeen. Yeah.
like we all used to
Halloween.
do.
Now, 3 years after Mary's birth and 2 years before Helen would be born, the United States passed a little thing you might have heard of called the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote.
Yeah.
But Ira Martin Gurley voted against that trash. He was not a fan of women doing anything. So he demanded that Cleo stop working and become a full time homemaker, a decision that, like leaving college and marrying Ira, Cleo would ultimately regret. Helen would later describe Cleo as terminally sad and sensitive to the point of dandelion fragility. Cleo had like a
Cute
lot
little
of,
prose.
I know, purple prose her whole life.
Ugh, it's
Like,
so extra, and I'm always here for it. I don't care who you are. If
no.
you don't flower that shit up for me, I'm not listening. I do
And
not
let me tell
understand
you,
it.
Helen loved two things. She loved a fucking M dash and an exclamation mark, and she was not afraid to use them.
Oh
She
God.
peppered them everywhere.
If she did that now, people would accuse her of using ChatGPT because
So true, because the
you
M
are
dash.
literally not allowed to use an M dash anymore without being fucking thrown onto a stake.
Maybe ChatGPT was just trained on a bunch of Helen Gurley Brown's prose.
Okay, that would be really cute.
Ever think of that? It's not
Creating
horny enough.
creating your own like LLM or whatever the fuck it's called, only trained on Helen
LLM.
Gurley. Oh
LLM
yes.
Gurley Brown.
Yes, but only trained on her work. I bet it would be so unhinged.
Unhinged. Unhinged. It would be horny. It would be
Mhm.
weird. Somebody who's
Mhm.
not me do this. Not to encourage AI, but so because of Cleo's kind of like lifelong depression, Mary and Helen, as children, perceived Ira to be the fun parent who would take them out and play with them, and Cleo as like not that. She was like the shut in, and she also had to be the disciplinarian.
Sounds like
It
they
was
were right.
it was
That
only
doesn't
when,
make it her
well,
fault, but
Ira was also like a horrible misogynist. Like, fuck
Mm,
that guy.
they loved misogyny back then.
They sure did. They were like,
Thankfully, we've gotten rid of it in the last
yeah.
couple years, but
Hmm. It was only when she was a teenager that Helen would find out that a lot of her mother's sadness stemmed from her regret over choosing Helen's father over Lee Bryan. A fact that like Helen did not really sympathize with much and found like incredibly frustrating. Because that's also like a weird thing to be like, my mom wishes she'd never married my father and by extension never had
yeah.
me. Like they had a long, complicated relationship. They were always in one another's lives and they loved each other, but like it was not an easy love. In 1923, a year after Helen's birth, Ira was elected to the Arkansas state legislature, where he'd eventually be appointed commissioner to the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, and the family moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, the state capital.
It was probably the highlight of his goddamn life, and it was nothing.
He was a big man.
Oh yeah? You know who's in charge of ducks for this little neck of the woods?
So they're from the South. And like I said, like Ira was a misogynist, but despite growing up in the American South, in like the very same city where President Dwight Eisenhower had to send the Army's 101st Airborne and National Guard to escort the Little Rock Nine to high school, Helen Gurley Brown actually didn't seem to carry very much of her home state's racism with her. Recalling Little Rock in an interview as an adult, she quipped that they didn't encounter much anti Semitism because they were already living in apartheid. And she remembered her parents being staunchly anti racist and raising her to abhor the anti Black attitudes of the early 20th century American South. So, in that way, they were pretty based as far as like white Southerners could be. They were like, see all this going on around us, this is bad. And I also think like a woman in the like later on in like the 1960s and 1970s calling that apartheid is
Oh
like
yeah.
a pretty big,
That's a
yeah,
statement.
that is a statement. However, her work as an adult rarely referenced race or the social dynamics that working class women of color were reckoning with. Sex and the Single Girl acknowledges neither them nor the ongoing civil rights movement at the time of its publication. Like she was definitely writing for like a presumed white audience.
White sex and the white single white girl
Yeah.
who's white.
I mean, she was very much a white feminist.
Yeah.
In 1927, when Helen was 5, Arkansas was the hardest hit state during the Mississippi flood, which is still the most destructive natural flood in US history.
Is that the
And
one with
in
Noah?
yeah, that's he actually got off not far from there with all of
Okay.
his animals, which is why there's so many bugs in the South
That
because he
makes
brought too
sense.
many bugs.
Mhm.
Hmm.
God actually never told him to bring 2 of each bug.
No, God was like, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
those are those are actually the devil's creatures.
Yeah, anything with fur is good. Why did you bring millipedes, you stupid fucking bitch?
He should have fucking specified 2 of each mammal. Like, the
Yeah.
birds will also be fine, they could just
Yeah.
fucking
Flap
fly.
around.
They're just taking up space.
Birds also float.
Yeah. All of them. All birds can swim.
All birds float.
So true. And the sequel to All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Their bones are hollow.
And then in 1929, the stock market crashed, causing the onset of the Great Depression.
Was it really that bad?
It was pretty great. Actually, they said it was great, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Oh, so they get a Great Depression and I
It
just
could have
get
just been an
the
okay
horrible one.
depression. So Arkansas was one of the worst possible places you could grow up in the late 1920s and 1930s.
And maybe even now.
Probably still. Nonetheless, because of her father's position in the state legislature, Helen's family fared better through the Depression than most Arkansans. That is, until June 18th, 1932, when Ira Martin Gurley was killed in a freak elevator accident at the age of 40.
This is early elevator, so they were running on like
Early elevator.
steam and dreams.
That's actually part of the story, is that it's like early elevator. So like this is like super gruesome and fucked up.
Perfect.
But like back in the early elevator days, they weren't automatic, obviously. They had operators. And
Mhm.
I guess the operator didn't see him step on at the last minute and had already hit up. And he was just crushed by the floor above, like while he was passing through the door. Fucked up, right?
That's so fucked up.
And obviously, again, early elevator days, it's not like they have a like a signal that somebody's like blocking like
Yeah,
we
they
do
also don't
now.
have any like I mean, one thing that I always find hilarious is in movies where the elevator crashes in like 2025, because that doesn't happen. It like
Mm-mm.
is literally impossible. That it cannot happen. There's like 8 fail safes. If it
Mhm.
drops even like a single floor, it automatically stops. But like
Stops.
back then, it was just like a giant box on a
It was a
crank.
pulley. It was literally a pulley. So, yeah,
So he got smooshed real bad. They made a fine little
he got
paste out of him.
fully smooshed. He got fully and you know the people waiting for the elevator saw it. You know a whole crew of people were traumatized by that.
Oh, absolutely.
Poor elevator operator. I
Well,
bet
he's
unless
making
he did it
jam
on
out of
purpose.
men, so He wanted Helen Gurley for himself.
Maybe so. He was like, I know that this 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, whatever, is gonna grow up to be a really horny,
Oh,
hot
okay, she's still a
bitch.
baby.
She's
Okay.
still a baby. Maybe he wanted his husband.
Oh, he wanted the he wanted
Maybe
the
it was Lee
husband.
Bryan. Maybe it was Lee Bryan. Oh my god, he wanted Ira Gurley, and he was like, if I
If
can't
I
have you,
can't
no
have you,
one
nobody
can.
can. That's so romantic.
That's okay. I love it. Let's do an episode about him instead. I want to hear about his life. What's his lore? So, like I said, Ira Gurley was very young. He was only 40. So he didn't leave his
Oh.
wife and daughters with a very big life insurance payout. And the state of Arkansas only paid his widow like a small grant.
Which, like, back then would be like $30 and would pay off their house and get them a couple chickens for the winter.
For
Like,
sure, but not that much more.
yeah,
And it was still the Depression. So either way,
one
like she would
chicken.
have to go back to work, but also in the 1930s, there were like lots of pieces of protective legislation that prevented women from being hired for more dangerous jobs in order to protect them from harm. But those also just so happen to be the jobs that like paid a living wage. The work that women were permitted to do was just like incredibly limited. So it wasn't looking amazing.
They were like, we can give you seamstress, or we also have elevator operator. That one's a no,
We
right?
fired the last guy. That's too dangerous, though. It was like
Not
basically we
for
could give
you,
you
not for her, for the people
it
getting
was like
on.
we could give you seamstress, and also there's like 47 seamstresses in this
Yeah.
neighborhood. Like you're gonna be sewing one dress a year, girl. So she's fucked. But speaking of life insurance and job prospects, do you want to take a break for life insurance ads?
Oh yeah, we should get the one with that little amphibian rat. That's like,
Geico,
mm-hmm,
Geico, Liberty,
Geico.
mu- 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 Mutual, General. Wait, I think that's just auto insurance, but still, that's fine. General,
General.
General. All right, ads. So, Helen Gurley Brown's mother, Cleo Gurley, was recently widowed with a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and it's the Great Depression.
You
So,
got to
like,
do it. My friend's parents, my friend Hansel and Gretel's parents did, and
just leave him in the woods.
just in the fucking
Yeah.
woods. I'm
Mm,
sorry, widowed with 2 kids in the
with
Great
2 kids in the Great
Depression.
Depression.
I am
You're on your
I am
own.
snacking on those babies.
Listen, you're
Y-
14 and 10. You can
I
fend for
am
yourselves.
yeah, you either leave or I make you into jerky. These are your options.
But on the bright side, Cleo Gurley was single now.
Beautiful, gorgeous. Oh right, you can always just find a new man.
Yeah. And she's still in love with her high school ex. So in 1933, Cleo is like, hey, Helen, do you want to go see the World's Fair in Chicago? Because Cleo thought that her old high school boyfriend, Lee Bryan, lived in Chicago.
Just thought.
Just thought. Turns out he didn't live in Chicago. He lived in Cleveland.
Sh-
And she's like 2 C names.
she
Cleveland,
spent all
Chicago.
she spent all that money,
Mhm.
like their grain budget for the winter, go to find this man in Chicago, and he wasn't even there.
And he wasn't there. He was in
Check his
another
Insta,
state.
bitch.
Cleveland is in another state.
I
It's
guess
another Midwestern
I guess they
state,
didn't
but
have
still.
Insta back then. We're like Steamsta, like whatever
Steam stuff. Oh, so
Steam
cute. Oh my
powered social
god.
media network that was running back then.
I would find that so cute for 30 minutes and then I would get really annoyed by Steamsta. A lot of real freaks on there. So the following year, Cleo's like, "Hey Helen, let's go to the World's Fair in Chicago again." But when they get there, it's raining. So she's like, we should get out of the rain and go see Cleveland for a little while. Again, Chicago, Illinois. She's like, "Oh no, it's raining. Let's just pop over to Cleveland, Ohio until the rain stops. And then we'll come back to Chicago afterwards."
Hmm.
So
Of
when they
course.
got to Cleveland, sound completely reasonable.
Never heard anything more reasonable.
So when they got to Cleveland, Cleo left her 11-year-old at a bunch of different movie theaters,
Mhm.
like around the city, while she went looking for her high school boyfriend. Just like moving neighborhood to neighborhood, being like, "Wait here, go see a movie. I'm gonna stalk for a little while."
Can't you, like, call the operator or something and be like, "Looking for this man?"
Gurley is stalking. Gurley is a fully
She's on the
stalking. Like
prowl.
she is, yeah, she is a
You know that
huntress.
scene in Hocus Pocus where they're, like, walking down the street and they're
And
like, yeah.
oh my god, it's us. It's us stomping around.
Looking for a man who looks like he has a podcast.
Yeah, with a little mustache. So, believe it or not, like this tactic works, and she eventually finds him.
I believe it because
Uh,
there's probably, like, what, 300 people that live there?
in Cleveland at that time. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Most of them are probably
Probably
dead because of the depressions.
Ohio gang, sound off in the comments. And when she found him, she dropped Helen off at yet more movie theaters while
Mhm.
she went on dates with her high school ex-boyfriend and caught up. And at one of these movie theaters, Helen encountered a flasher who then stalked her around the theater. So Cleo was like, "Fine, I'll take you back to Chicago and we'll go to the World's Fair." Just like putting her child in danger. And was like, "Oh my god, my daughter is so annoying. I have to take her to the
Okay,
World's Fair."
she is a little annoying. How old was she?
She's 11 and she's like, "Mom, a guy
Okay,
flashed his penis at me and then followed me around."
okay, 11 is too young. For some reason, I thought she was 14, and I'm like,
The older one was
you're old enough to kick a man in the dick."
11.
11 is way too fucking young to be leaving them anywhere.
So 5 years after this event, Cleo and Lee Bryan did eventually end up getting married, but like maybe a little bit ironically, he didn't end up being like very much of a presence in the family's life, and he ended up dying slowly and painfully of stomach cancer 5 years after that.
Did
So
he have a life insurance policy that was good?
I don't think so. I get
Well,
the impression that Lee Bryan was like very poor. No life insurance for poor people.
oh my god, this makes so much sense for Helen Gurley now. It's
Yeah.
like it's like number 1, you don't need just one man. Get different men for different things.
And don't
Uh
date poor
yeah,
ones.
one for love, one for money, one for various gifts, and I don't know, maybe a butcher, maybe a baker.
Maybe a candlestick maker.
Oh my god.
I
Oh,
do love a Yankee Candle though.
I was about to say if I met
A Voluspa.
a goddamn candle maker, like
Ugh.
I literally burned through those things so quickly.
I know. God, I'd be saving like $3,500 a month.
Minimum.
Also, I mean, like this story in particular, I included it because, like, all jokes aside, it does like reveal a lot about Helen's
Mhm.
attitude. Cause like she also kind of like grew up thinking her mom was like pathetic. And I see
Well, she
why.
was.
And she was like, I'm never like, because Helen was also like, Helen did pursue men, but she was never going to be a chaser like this. She was like, well, not like that. Not in this current sense. She wasn't going to chase men. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? She was gonna lock her eyes on a man and get him to chase her
Yeah.
because she thought her mom. And this is like part of the reason that they had so much tension as well, is because she was like, my mom's a pathetic loser stalking men around different cities with C that begin with C.
And she was right. And I mean, it is a woman's right to be a pathetic loser.
So true.
Probably not to stalk, but
No. But it's also another woman's right to be like, ooh, ew, I don't want to be
yikes.
that. I don't want to be,
Yeah.
no.
And it is all of our rights to judge our parents because everybody's
Oh my God,
parent is cringe as
totally.
hell.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The second that child comes into the world, you are now cringe. And that's
It's so
okay.
true. It's beautiful. It's the circle of life. In 1937, Cleo, Mary, and Helen would move to Los Angeles, California, where Mary almost instantly contracted polio, permanently disabling her.
Thank God we've
Yeah.
gotten rid of all these horrible diseases you can vaccinate against and we're all
Yeah.
safe
So
forever.
true. They're completely gone. So, unlike Mary, no person ever again needs to spend their life permanently disabled thanks to polio.
Okay, I will say, cute name for like a little Italian boy.
Polio. Hey, it's a polio.
Mm.
She was wheelchair bound for the entirety of her life, and because like as unkind as the world is now to disabled people, it was a lot worse back then.
There was no ADA.
There was no ADA. Like literally, like
The opposite, actually.
one of the things that Helen recalled in like later interviews was like how gracefully Mary dealt with the fact that the city of Los Angeles was just like not designed for wheelchair users. Like she would have to be step by step trying to move her wheelchair up literal stairs. Like, and Mary struggled with alcoholism her entire life because what else are you going to do?
I mean, I wasn't permanently disabled by polio, and I like a
I like
I like
a
a little
little too many
blackout here or
drinks.
there.
Well, like if I don't have a hangover day, I'm never going to take a day off.
Literally never.
It's the only way I
I
can get
I
myself to
don't
lay on a
even.
couch for a day.
I was about to say I don't even touch my couch unless I'm like literally
Hungover.
ill.
And like Mary's polio diagnosis, that is our cross to bear.
Mhm. Which is worse? No way to
Who
know.
can say? Speaking of alcoholism, let's have another ad break. Can we get booze this time?
Ooh, yeah.
Do they advertise for that?
I
Yeah.
want Bud Light.
I want Corona.
just the classy stuff. Molson.
Martini Asti. In Sex and the Single Girl, Helen would kind of mythologize herself as a never very pretty and never very intelligent. She actually invented the
Iconic.
term. I know. She was like, I'm just a dumb, ugly, stupid bitch. And yet I made it.
I'm
And you
like
can too.
subscribed.
Yeah, like, subscribe. Helen invented the term mouse burger to describe herself and others like her, which means a young woman of unexceptional appearance and talents regarded as timid, dowdy, or mousy. But her time as a teenager in high school in Los Angeles suggests that she was anything but a mouse burger. She did suffer with some pretty aggressive acne, but other than that, she was pretty popular and excelled academically, being involved with multiple extracurriculars and performing in the top 10% of her high school peers. Some of Helen's perception of her own personal beauty seemed to stem from Cleo, who called her ugly basically and kind of gave her mixed messages about the necessity of beauty. Like Cleo herself had been the plain sister with a very pretty sister,
Hmm.
and she had wanted a pretty daughter, but she didn't feel like Helen was pretty. And so she was like, oh, you just need to work really hard on your grades and like succeed academically because you can't rely on your beauty. So she like tried to encourage her to use her brain, but she also did it in that kind of like backhanded way that mothers do, where
Hmm.
it's like, bless you, you know? Anyway, she wasn't ugly, in my opinion, and I'm going to send you some pictures and you can decide for yourself.
I love the part of the podcast where we're like, I'm gonna send you some photos. Decide for yourself if she's ugly. I'm not gonna tell you what to think.
Let the evidence speak for itself. Okay, here's one.
She kind of looks like Sarah Koenig.
I can't remember what Sarah Koenig looks like.
Like this.
I don't think she's ugly at all. I think she's
She's not
really
ugly.
adorable. I think she's adorable.
Like, she's not like hot.
But she's pretty and
She's
she's
not
cute.
ugly, like
She's not ugly.
in any way.
No. And also like both of these pictures, these are like
Those are good pictures.
these are
Number
pictures of
one.
her when she's like in her 40s. Like she's hot.
Her little like stripy outfit, cute as hell.
She's got great style. I think she's
And
got
her
such great
hair,
style.
that's
It's
what the
big.
wig that my grandmother
Oh my God, cute.
wore day to day look like? Because
I miss
she
when
had
we had big hair
alopecia.
like this.
Is that her real hair?
It might be. We used to like go to, salons and get it teased and
Hmm.
sprayed so it looked that big. I wish when we
She's
did
such a
I
rebel
wish we still
sitting
did that.
on the desk.
I know. She's so cool. She's so
Yeah,
sexy.
she looks cute.
Helen's ugly duckling mentality did lead her to develop a strong personal style, as I said, and taste in fashion and
Hmm.
makeup in order to compensate for her feelings of inadequacy. And I do think that that's part of it. Like, she dresses really well. But it also led to lifelong body and weight issues and an incessant need to control her weight and the weight of those around her. She once said, "Skinny is sacred to me." And her advice books and columns are full of numerous suggestions on how to stay as thin as possible, most of which are like fucked up and like incredibly unsafe, like the wine and egg diet, not the least among them. Skip forward 15 seconds if you don't want to hear numbers. So she was 5'3" and she maintained a weight of 100 pounds most of her life, which she claimed was 5 pounds above her goal weight. So we're talking what? That's got to be like a 16 BMI.
She was already dead. Like,
She was so I mean, you can see in the picture, she was so thin.
yeah.
She exercised every single day of her life, all the way into her late 80s, and rigidly controlled her diet, often eating very little. Her typical lunch at New York's Russian tea room was a small salad and Perrier sipped through a straw. You got to drink that Perrier real slowly to make it
Yeah,
count.
you don't want to gorge on it.
You don't want to
on,
gorge on that sparkling water.
on that water.
Also, when she got married, she like did go through a period of time where she was like weighing her husband every day too.
That's
She was a little bit of
insane.
a control freak, a little
She
bit of
did
a
that
control
thing
freak.
where you step on the scale and weigh yourself, and then you pick up your husband and you step on it to see how much he weighs.
That's right. Like your cat. She is the typical anorexic, like control freak. After Helen graduated from high school, Cleo and Mary moved to Georgia for Mary's polio treatment for a time. And Helen, like her mother, managed to complete one semester of college at Texas State College for Women before moving back to Los Angeles to attend secretarial school so that she could financially support her mother and sister. Her support of her family and her mother having sacrificed to support her family sort of led to a lot of Helen's disdain for becoming a homemaker, and also
Mhm.
for a lot of her like fuck you got mine attitude that she developed when it came to other people, because she was basically like, I've already got, dependents, I don't need any more, so I refuse to hang out with poor people. In interviews, she recalled only hanging out with wealthier, more successful people in her early career because she didn't want to become anybody else's mommy. During and after secretarial school, Helen worked 17 different secretary positions in the Los Angeles area
Damn.
because she was like a little bit of a fuck up.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sorry. You do not have the ability to like remember to book somebody's appointment or to like grab your boss's lunch when you haven't eaten in 3
When
weeks.
you're so
Like,
hungry. So, one of these positions was typing up ad reads at a local Los Angeles radio station. And she recalled that when the Pearl Harbor attacks happened in 1941, while they weren't at work, one of her coworkers raced to the radio station to like get to work and help out. And Helen just stayed home and continued getting ready for a date. I love her.
She said, I'm
I'm
not
sorry, I love
clocked
her.
in. Like,
She
sorry,
was
I wasn't
like,
scheduled today.
it's not my job to report the news. I just write ad reads. So what do you want me to do? Love this bitch. At the same radio station, okay, well, now I'm going to say something that makes me not love her as much. At the same radio station, Helen's male colleagues played a game they called Scuttle,
Mm.
where they approached female coworkers from behind and reached down and pulled their panties off from under their skirts.
That's a game called sexual assault,
It's a game called violent sexual assault.
as opposed to the nonviolent
as
kind.
opposed to the non like very aggressive sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault.
I'm aggravated thinking about them calling it fucking scuttle.
Scuttle, fuck you.
Isn't that stupid rat from
It's the
Little
bird from The
Mermaid?
Little Mermaid,
Yeah.
yeah. Years later, Helen expressed disappointment that her male coworkers never did it to her and used Scuttle no longer being acceptable in the American workplace as an example of feminism gone too
Oh
far.
my god. Girl,
Helen,
I'm gonna need you
Helen,
to go outside, smoke a cigarette, come back in, eat a grape, and then sit down and we can talk about this.
Helen. In the 1990s, when the Anita Hill hearings were going on, Helen made similar comments saying that workplace sexual attention is meant to be flattering. Helen. So, this was not the only time that Helen Gurley Brown butted heads with feminists and feminism. She considered herself an ardent feminist her entire life, but rather than trying to address women's unequal position in society by dismantling patriarchy, she argued for women to exploit the inequitable system to their best advantage. She called herself a realist. For example, like she clocked the fact that women's careers didn't have the same upward trajectory as men, and she basically argued for exploiting male desire for everything from free meals to trips to jewelry in multiple columns and books and things. And she also, like, she argued things like, when you're dating a guy, allow him to offer to get you a taxi home, pocket the money, like take the taxi around the corner, pay him
Yeah,
the like dollar to go around the corner, pocket the rest of the money and get the bus home. Like just steal
that's
from
so
men.
smart.
She's a genius.
I mean, I'm
But
not taking the fucking bus home, but, like, I will say the taxi's more expensive than it was.
yeah. Oh, she was also like, if you have a car, like just lie and say you don't, like, and
Mhm.
get the taxi around the corner, pocket the cash. But yeah, she was like not. It wasn't. sh- It wasn't so much that she didn't want to dismantle the inequitable system. It was just that she was like,
It's
she
like, I
felt
can't
like
do that on
working.
my own.
Yeah, working towards that is like a waste of time to her. She's like, it is what it is.
I mean, to be fair, she was
Mm.
probably really sleepy.
I'm sure, dismantling things has got to be so hard when you've had so little protein.
It's so much harder than mantling. Like,
It's so much harder than mantling. Earlier on in her life, she kind of she voted like all over the ballot. She voted for, Democrats, Republicans, whatever. As she moved on further in life, as she got older, contrary to what people say happened, she actually did like get more liberal. And though she always was like kind of like a centrist Democrat towards the end, she credited the rad femmes, like in the second wave feminist movement, with really being the ones who did the important work. She was like, I was just sitting here. She like marched for the ERA and that kind of thing. And she did insist that women not marry for money and leave the workforce. I mean, she was like, why waste your time with a poor man because you don't want to like take care of him, but don't
yeah,
like marry him to get his money and leave the workforce, both because she saw meaningful work as important to like women's self-actualization. She's like, who are you without a job?
but also her mom.
Yeah, and she recognized that even though you could use men for money for fun, that women needed to have their own means of supporting themselves to fall back on,
Yeah,
no matter what. Like any situation that you didn't want to be in, you can get yourself out of. Just like let him buy you a fucking diamond and don't complain about it.
you actually don't need to marry someone to take their money.
So true.
Bank
So
robbers don't.
true. And
MLMs don't.
getting away from him is a lot easier if you're not married to him.
Yeah.
Stealing from him is easier if you're not married. Sex negative feminists also found fault with Helen's very sex positive brand of feminism because they saw it as like turning oneself into a sex object for male pleasure because they didn't believe that women, you know,
Mhm.
So eventually, Cleo and Mary returned to Los Angeles and even started working to support themselves for a time, helping the family. Helen was still like the main breadwinner before deciding to move back to Arkansas to be closer to family and to give Helen a chance at striking out in the world alone. So this was like another decision that Cleo made. She was like, Helen needs to be able to go live her life. And again, like later on, Helen recognized that for like as like the sacrificial act that it was.
Yeah.
Now that Helen really was living on her own for the first time in her early 20s. She got to explore her social life, including dating and even doing a little bit of sex work. So, in her memoir, I'm Wild Again, Helen recalled answering an ad for an escort service that offered $5 a date. And on the first date she went on, she made out with her client, but when she realized she'd have to have sex with him for $5, she called the date. And she took the $5, but
Of
then she
course.
she just like went home and her escort career ended. She did, however, spend quite a long stretch of her 20s sugaring. So back then it was called being a kept woman. But Helen was the sugar baby for an older, wealthy man trying to break into Hollywood that she referred to in her diaries only as M.
So classy.
I know. I love that she's like, "Oh, my problem with escorting is I don't want to have sex with lots of people for $5 a pop. I need to sugar. I need to give the girlfriend experience."
To be kept.
To be kept. I
Yeah.
need him paying for everything, not
Mhm.
$5,
Mhm.
even though $5 was what? Like, probably like $100 back then. So M never quite succeeded in breaking into the entertainment industry, in no small part because M was incredibly anti Semitic and refused to
Ooh.
work with any Jews. But while he was in town trying, he took Helen on expensive dates, vacations, put her up in an apartment, and even offered to set her mother and sister up with apartments in Los Angeles. He was like,
Well, that's
they can come
that's
back. I'll
lovely
let them
for
live here.
her, and it's lovely that he failed.
Yeah.
I love to see an anti-Semite fail.
It's so cute. The audacity as well of like moving to Los Angeles and being like, I'm going to make it in Hollywood without working with any Jewish people. Like,
I'm sorry, getting into any industry at any point and saying you're not gonna work with any specific set of
group, I
marginalized
mean, it's
people is
insane.
and how is that gonna go? How are you
Poorly.
gonna
Yeah. So at first, Helen appreciated the glitz and glamour of her position, but she soon began to resent it. She was expected to be available to M at all times, which often meant sitting at home in case he managed to get away from his wife.
Right, she doesn't have a cell phone, so
Yeah.
she has to be
And
there if he calls.
yeah, she has to. So, like, her friends would go out and she'd be like, I have to sit around and see if, because M might come.
Mhm.
He hated her friends, especially her Jewish friends, and he tried to prevent her from seeing them. And she came to hate having sex with him. She also resented her complete lack of independence. She was basically a wife without legal protections at this point, and her entire life and livelihood centered around him because she didn't have a job during this period of time.
Mhm.
She was just being kept. She was just sugaring. And eventually his business ventures failed because again, he was a committed anti-Semite trying to break into Hollywood, and he left town, ending the affair. After this, Helen decided to give up sugaring and decided that while she liked dating wealthy men, she needed to depend on herself for survival.
You can do both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's still going to accept gifts.
Yeah.
She eventually landed a job as an advertising copywriter at one of the firms she worked at, which was a very unusual job for women to hold in the post war period and with a much higher pay rate than clerical work. Women were considered too emotional to write copy or to take feedback. But reviews of
Thankfully,
her
men don't have any egos at all. They're just not
yeah,
born
it's
with
so
them.
true. Women hate getting feedback. That's why we always have to say nice things to women all the time. But reviews of her performance as a copywriter during this time indicate that her skill writing ads was adept, not merely in spite of her femininity, but because of it. Like, turns out women know how to write ads
Yeah.
directed at women. So she quickly rose the ranks to become the highest paid female copywriter on the West Coast. And speaking of ads, should we stop for some?
Yeah. Let's see if we can get an ad for the West Coast.
Oh my God.
Just the whole
Travel
coast.
Oregon, travel California, Alaska.
I think that's
Does
the
that
North
count?
Coast.
Oh, you're so smart. In Sex and the Single Girl, Helen brings up the Don Juan, the fuck boy, as a rite of female passage. She claims to have dated 2 Don Juans in her life, one of which was a man she referred to in her journals as WG. WG lavished her with gifts and champagne, but otherwise treated her like shit. He openly had affairs in front of her, would buy gifts for other women while they were on vacation together, leave love letters out in the open for her to see, and she left and came back to him several times. Now, one of the things that one of her most controversial opinions is that like women should have affairs with married men. And Jennifer Scanlon in the biography like points out this contradiction and suggests that like because one of the things that Helen always underlines is tasteful secrecy, you know?
Mhm.
So Jennifer Scanlon thinks that maybe her issue is more with like the fact that WG was like so open and showy about the fact that
Flagrant,
he was
yeah.
cheating on her. Yeah, which is a sign of disrespect. Like
Oh, yeah, of course.
at least have the decency to be quiet about it.
Mhm.
Throughout her later 20s and into her early and mid 30s, as her career was blossoming, Helen had several opportunities to marry as well, but didn't. Looking back on it, she always said like the guys that she was interested in marrying weren't as interested in her, and the guys who proposed to her, she she was like, I'd rather stay single.
I know how this goes. Jensen Ackles does not return my emails.
Mm. Honestly, rude. Bucking the dominant cultural trend of the 1950s of marrying young and becoming a housewife, Helen insisted on her ethos that marriage was insurance for the worst years of your life and that getting married
Aw.
while you were young was a waste of your youth.
Okay, you
Like,
know what? I actually like that. I like that
yeah.
in sickness and in health is kind of a threat. Like like, just so you know, when I get old, I'm gonna be so fucking disabled. As you
And
do.
you're my insurance.
Yeah.
That's what you're here for.
Yeah. You're my future toilet paper for when I can't wipe my own ass and I'm 80. How about that?
Aw, I love that. That's so sweet.
I got this is my boyfriend. My cute nickname for him is Charmin.
TP. Charmin.
Prince
Oh, that's
Charmin.
so romantic. Not
You're my
Prince
Prince Charmin.
Charmin. Aw.
Sick. Literally sick.
Disgusting.
Scatological. Disgusting. Sick.
Not to kink shame,
Not to kink shame, but some
but I
kinks are
am.
shameful.
Okay. She also had no interest in having children, and she like associated marriage with children. So she was like,
Mhm.
why would I?
Well, because if you get married, especially around that time, but still, someone's going to be expecting you to be a wife and then, of course, a mother because
Yeah.
those things just go hand in hand.
And she was like, I'd rather not.
Yeah, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put a kid? There's no movie theaters around here.
However, when one of her friends mentioned to her that Hollywood producer David Brown was fresh off of his second marriage, she fell in love before first sight. She fell in love with his credentials.
Aww.
Her friend like listed his resume and she was like,
Aww,
I'm gonna
that's
marry
so
him.
cute.
So she decided. She was like, I'm gonna marry David Brown. And her friend told her
Did
that
he know or not yet?
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. She hadn't even laid eyes on him yet. She was like, "Oh, I'm gonna marry
Damn,
him."
she
So
really took a page out of her mom's book.
she really did.
She's like, I'm gonna find this fucking
Psycho.
man.
Oh, she's sweet, but she's psycho. I love her. Her friend told her she was like, "Okay, who's that guy? I'm gonna marry him then." And her friend was like, "Okay, well, he's going through a starlet phase right now. He's sleeping with a bunch of pretty young actresses while he's getting over his second marriage dissolving. So just like wait a little bit." So she did. She waited
Yeah,
a full
let
year.
him do the rebound so
Yeah, let him
that
do the
when he's
rebound.
ready for something real, you're right
You're
there
there. Yeah,
outside
it's
his
smart.
house in the bushes at night.
It's such good advice. So she waited a full year and then her
In
friend
those
gave her the
bushes. She didn't move the
in
whole
those
year.
bushes with black paint under her on her cheeks.
Her like little trenches look.
So cute. And then her friend gave her the green light and she struck and they went to dinner
Like a
and they hit it
viper.
off. Yeah, like a viper. And they started dating. And Helen, from basically the word go, was pushing for marriage with this guy. She's like, marry me when, marry me when, marry me when, which I also think is iconic to be like, I hate marriage. I don't need to get married. Marry me when.
Yeah.
Helen had been on a waiting list for the Park La Brea apartments in Hollywood, and finally it opened up and she got an offer for this apartment for like years. Finally, she got an offer for this apartment, but she turned it down and moved to Pacific Palisades to be closer to David, which was what she eventually would advise women to do in Sex and the Single Girl. She's like, get an apartment close to his, be a stalker.
Yeah, that's specifically bad advice.
That is, and I know because I just went through the process. That is how you end up getting a restraining order
Yeah.
against you.
And so deservedly.
Yeah. But, they were dating. She moved on with a kill, even as David indicated that he was like not ready to rush into another marriage, into his third. But finally, after a year and a half of dating, Helen issued David an ultimatum and they were engaged. And
That's
then
so
after,
romantic.
so romantic. She basically threw a fit at him and stormed out. And he was like, please, please come back. And she was
I
like,
have always said coercion is consent.
my my ring finger is so fucking cold. My ring finger is so, I can't come back. It gets colder when I'm around you. And after a lengthy on again, off again betrothal, they were married in a quiet, private ceremony in Beverly Hills. Helen Gurley Brown was 37 years old when she was married. In the early days of their marriage, David and Helen really struggled with David's teenage son from his first marriage, Bruce.
Ew.
So Bruce, yeah, David and Bruce. And also, okay, sorry, this definitely wasn't intentional because this came along later, but David ended up being the producer of Jaws that had a
Oh,
shark named Bruce in it.
I mean, maybe he
He
did he?
named the shark after his son.
Yeah,
Bruce was 16 and sullen, and he and his high school
as
friends
you
would do like,
do.
yeah, as you are. Like they were being teenage boys.
Yeah.
But when you never wanted to be a mom to begin with, and then suddenly you've got these stinky, like
Oh yeah.
sullen, rude teenage
Did they
boys
even have
hanging around the
deodorant back
house.
then?
Probably not. And they
Yeah.
were like
They had
sleeping
to
all
use steam.
day, eating everything in the fucking house.
Yeah.
David kept like
Oh my god.
eating
Her eating her
everything.
single grape a day and seeing these
Well,
fucking
he's eating
men
pizza.
yeah.
I'd
Ugh.
commit crimes. I'd commit
Mhm.
murder. And when like David and Helen would leave the house, he would throw like wild high school parties and the cops would get called. So
Mhm.
they were struggling. And Bruce did not like Helen initially either. So there was some tension there. But, as he matured a little bit, he and Helen did come to sort of like respect each other as casual friend. She was never going to be the motherly
Yeah.
type. And once he was like a grown up, she was like, okay, well, now that you're
Yeah, can
fuckable,
we
you're
drink
fine.
together?
Yeah.
Like
Yes. My God. So their relationship definitely softened as he grew up. However, as an adult, Bruce would struggle with severe substance abuse problems that would eventually end his life. And Helen and David repeatedly tried to help him, and his ultimate death ended up being like what they both considered the one significant failure of their relationship, because they had a very good marriage. They stayed married until they both passed away, and it seemed like they were largely incredibly happy, but this was like the one big blot on their love, is that they couldn't save Bruce. What Helen considered to be one of the sexiest things about David, her husband, was the way he continued her career aspirations. Again, it was another time, so she was like, oh my god, a man who isn't bullying me to stay at home and be a housewife.
I love the
This
idea
is
of like
so
the
hot.
sexiest thing about you is about me.
Yeah.
Iconic.
I love
Truly
her. I
iconic.
love her.
The sexiest thing about you is I get to do whatever I want.
What I want. And you love it.
Which, to be fair, back then is like the sexiest thing about you is you are the closest thing to a feminist that
Yeah.
this time period had.
It's literally the sexiest thing about my husband is that he treats me like an equal and
Person. Yeah.
a peer. So David's previous marriages had also been to working women, and while he carried a lot of the typical post-war male attitudes and expectations of women, he kind of also seemed to only respect women who had meaningful occupations. He was like, "Get out of the house, touch grass."
Yeah.
So, when Helen broached the topic of potentially writing a book, he not only wholeheartedly encouraged the idea, but like he helped her get the outline for the idea of what would eventually become Sex and the Single Girl.
Cute.
Yeah, and
The two
he
of them
actually he
smoking cigarettes
oh my
inside,
god,
drinking
so cute,
wine,
right?
working out a draft.
We got
Adorable.
a little manuscript together,
Ugh.
and the idea for the title was also David's. He was like, "You have to have sex in it," because he's a Hollywood producer. He was like, "It has to have a
Yeah.
controversial title." And when they were like shopping it around to different like publishing houses, a lot of them were like, "You need to tone down some of the content. You need to remove the title." And David was like, "Don't you fucking dare. We will find someone who will publish it as is."
Yeah.
He was like, "You don't want to like water it down." He had recognized Helen's talent for writing early in the first days of their marriage.
He was like, I saw her. She knows every single of the 26 letters.
So true. All ABCs. I only know the first three.
All the letters from A to C.
I mean, she was when she was with him, she was working as a copywriter, but he
Mhm.
recognized her ability to, write more than that because when she was away, he had actually come across a stack of old correspondence that she had with a former lover while she was out of town. And rather than getting jealous, David read through them and was like, damn, this shit's good. This shit's fire. And in addition to her correspondence with former lovers, Helen had compiled a series of biographical anecdotes and fictional short stories dealing with women's work and sex lives over the years. And some of them were like retooled for Sex and the Single. Like it's very clear that like this wasn't just an idea she had one day. This was
Yeah.
something that she was like working toward consciously or not over the course of her life.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Um,
intentionally or otherwise, she was still doing the work.
yeah, she
It was
was like
still like leading
writing
towards something.
and holding on to things. Like some of them were biographical anecdotes, some of them were fictional stories. Among them were some that were considered too controversial for publication in 1962, including a story about a woman who was too afraid to tell her boyfriend about her previous sexual experience, thus condemning herself to a life of bad sex. So it's like I can't tell him what to do because then he'll know I've had sex
Yeah.
before. And now, like the Twilight Zone, I'm condemned to have sex with this limp fucking noodle. And a story about a woman who tried to terminate a pregnancy via self harm and via stacking heavy objects on her torso. Those were not included.
You got to add some extra spicy stuff so
Hmm.
that they don't cut out the stuff you actually expect to get
So
in.
true.
It's
So
so
true.
smart.
It's a good move.
You give
And
them the
it's,
stuff that you like, no, they won't let me do this, but at least then I can fight them on it and be like, well, I've made concessions. Where are
yeah,
yours?
where are yours? And they're not even looking at the other shit.
Yeah.
And in like in a sequel to Sex and the Single Girl, Sex in the Office, she'd
Sex in
also
the
written
City.
like
Oh.
yeah, that's right. Actually, that's where Sex in the City, the original column was a reference to Sex and the Single Girl, like the
That's what
title.
I like. I wasn't sure, but it
Yeah,
seemed too fucking
too similar.
coincidental.
It was supposed to be a reference. But yeah, like she had written Sex in the Office and things that were excised from that were like stories about like lesbianism and again abortion. Like she was trying to sneak this stuff in very early on and then would end up publishing a lot of stories about that in Cosmo eventually.
Nice.
Once Sex and the Single Girl was published, it became an almost instant smash hit, selling millions of copies. Helen got invited on numerous talk shows. She was given a newspaper column and a film
Nice.
adaptation starring Natalie Wood that was released in 1964. And this film Kaylin, is so bad. I've tried multiple times to watch it, and each time I get like 20 minutes in, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's
Were you
fucking
sober?
awful. Yes, maybe I need to be drunk.
Yeah,
It's not going to be our morgue, but like maybe as a bonus episode one day we can
one
get
day.
really shit faced and try to watch it together. It's
Yeah.
awful.
We'll each after a full bottle of wine
Yeah, and
and
no
like I don't
food.
know, like a cute
Helen
little
Gurley Brown style.
a Cadbury mini egg or something each.
Oh my god, that counts. It's still an egg. She did say eggs any style.
What about Easter style?
In the year following the publication of Sex and the Single Girl, Helen got so much fan mail that the post office in Pacific Palisades refused to deliver it to her. They were like, you have to come here and pick it up yourself.
That's hilarious.
Sex
They're
and the
like you're
Single Girl.
bankrupting the city.
Yeah, we will not do this. The workman's comp claims on dragging your fucking post. Sex and the Single Girl was published the year before Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique, the book largely credited with kicking off second wave feminism. And Friedan and Helen Gurley Brown are often compared because both of their books were responding to the same post-war
Mhm.
dissatisfaction that Friedan called the problem with no name, and the elusive and restrictive cultural norms that Friedan called the feminine mystique. After the publication of The Feminine Mystique, Helen Gurley Brown wrote to Friedan to tell her how wonderful she thought the book was. And Friedan wrote back asking Helen for advice on how to promote her book, and then went on to publicly lambast Helen Gurley Brown's work as anti feminist.
Mhm.
Shady bitch. I've got some problems with Betty Friedan.
Just I got some problems,
I got some
okay,
problems with
Betty.
Betty Friedan. In 1963, the year following the release of Sex and the Single Girl, Helen and David moved to Manhattan. Around this time, Helen and David started putting together a proposal for a magazine tentatively called Femme. That would be like for Helen's single girl audience, women who were like sexually active, independent, liberated, and they kind of pitched it as a feminine alternative to Playboy.
Okay.
But rather than launching her own magazine, a new opportunity fell into her lap. Before working in Hollywood, David had been an editor of several Hearst Corporation magazines, including the floundering Cosmopolitan Magazine. Hearst asked Helen, still riding on the high of her Sex and the Single Girl fame, to come in as an editor of Cosmo, which featured, at the time, such riveting headlines as "The Lyndon Johnson Only His Family Knows" and "Diabetes, Will Your Children Inherit It?" Inhabiting her new persona as a sexed up lifestyle guru, Helen completely revamped Cosmopolitan Magazine. Her inaugural issue featured a cover with the headline, "World's Greatest Lover, What It Was Like to Be Wooed by Him." Other titles include "The Tricky Sticky Male Menopause, How
Wow.
His Can Affect You." "Snow Warning, Some Hard Facts About Cocaine Use on the Hollywood party circuit."
Okay,
And
gorgeous.
"You Always Have Orgasms, Suddenly You Don't. Why?" We will be taking a look at some of the old Cosmo covers in the morgue.
Cute.
So if you guys would like to see us have a look at that, sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/respectthedead, where you have access to every episode of the morgue, which are like little companion episodes, little B-sides for every episode. And anybody at the weirdos tier or higher can also suggest future subjects for episodes in our little suggestion cemetery.
I love the idea of us in the morgue, like each on us one side of the slab that her rotting body is on, and we're just like flipping through cosmos that are like laid out on her and being like, "Oh my god, cute! I love this one."
Painting her little toenails.
Aw, her like rotting,
Getting
like
her
just like
ready.
the toe bone because she's been dead for long enough.
Okay, let's take like one last commercial break. Helen Gurley Brown not only saved Cosmopolitan Magazine when she took over as editor in chief in 1965, but she oversaw its expansion to over 100 countries. And she created the image of the Cosmo girl, who she defined as self made, sexual, and supremely ambitious. She looked great, wore fabulous clothes, and had an unabashedly good time when those clothes came off. And as the 20th century drew to a close, she started to grow a little bit more out of touch with those Cosmo girls of the 1990s and was gently asked to step down as editor in chief in 1997 after 32 years. It's
Yeah,
a
that's too
long
long.
ass time. Yeah.
That's too long.
Like
There should be
she was like
term limits on the editor
fully in
of
her
Cosmo.
80s. Yeah, she's fully
Like,
in her 80s talking to women in their 20s. In February of 2010, David Brown died of kidney failure at the age of 93, and Helen followed him on August 12th, 2012. Both were laid to rest in adjacent graves in Helen's maternal family plot in Cisco Cemetery in Arkansas. And apparently, they're both etched with an image of something. I forget which his is etched with, but hers is etched with an image of a pussy cat, because apparently she always used to say the word pussycat and she would pronounce it pussycat.
okay, that's gorgeous.
It's adorable. Pussycat.
It's giving like a little Eartha Kitt vibe.
Oh, for sure. Oh my God, you know this bitch was inspired by Eartha Kitt. In the final chapter of Sex and the Single Girl, Helen Gurley Brown urges her readers to live their lives to the fullest, whether or not there was a pot of gold and a husband waiting at the end of the rainbow. Quote, "You may marry or you may not. In today's world, that is no longer the big question for women. Those who glom onto men so that they can collapse with relief spend the rest of their days shining up their status symbol and figure they never have to reach, stretch, learn, grow, face dragons, or make a living again are the ones to be pitied. They, in my opinion, are the unfulfilled ones. You, my friend, if you work at it, can be envied the rich, full life possible for the single woman today. It's a good show. Enjoy it from wherever you are, whether it's two in the balcony or one on the aisle. Don't miss any of it." And that's our show. You can follow us at _respect the dead on all platforms. You can follow me at Punished Hoots on Twitter, at Hoots on Blue Sky, and you can see my YouTube videos at Hoots YouTube. Kaylin.
I'm on everything as at Kaylin Conrad, but Blue Sky is just at Kaylin because I got in. I'm an early adopter.
Our editor is Davi Armanino. You can check out more of their work at daviarmanino.com. And that's all for this week. Love my little single girls.
Bye.
Bye.